sure that we all know where we can find this document so that when we're done with the lesson, you can still have access to it. Any questions about where we can find it? Okay, so we can see that the research paper is right there in lesson 6.3, I believe it's 6.3. Yep, it's right there, or it's in the announcements page of your forensic site. So here are the 4 options. You've got one option, which is you can choose a forensics to research the forensics process of a unsolved mystery and your thoughts on the outcome. So that's anything. There are so many different places where you can find unsolved mysteries. There's a ton of Netflix documentaries. There's a ton of shows. There is a site, a YouTube channel of somebody called Kendall Ray, where she kind of walks you through it. Now, those videos and those documentaries are a really great way to start choosing your topic, but you're not going to base all of your research on that, okay? So when you do your research, you can either go through the library or you can do it online, and you're going to want to find as many articles, primary sources like the articles that were created. If you could find any sort of evidence that you can see yourself and use those skills and the notes that you took over the last semester. We'll get a little bit more into that in a second, but you can choose one of the unsolved mysteries, and you're going to go and answer the questions that I'm going to go over in just a few. Another option is choosing a forensics show. So I talked about Kendall Ray. She walks through some of the courses or the cases and talks about it. So you can get a hold of that, or you can watch a show like CSI, and you can assess how accurate it is. So they're accurate it is. So you can analyze the show and analyze the reality of it. So that's things like CSI. If you watch Lucifer, you could do it through there. If you watch NCIS, you can do that show. So you can pretty much choose any show that is a crime.
Miss Fierstein, you froze, or maybe that's just me.
Nah, she froze for everyone.
I'm back.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, I am alive again. Yeah, my internet, my power is wonky today. It's gone out twice today already. So I don't know why. It's like literally beautiful outside. So awesome. Great news. So I was just talking, by the way, like I just continued to talk. So I don't know where I left off. What was the last thing I was saying about the research project? Anyone? Bueller?
Like how there was this YouTube channel that you could watch and something.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, Courtney. So yes, there is okay, let me backtrack now because I was on a roll and now I have to like go back to figuring out where I was in my role. So we were talking about the research project. I was telling you about your 4 options. Yeah, I told you about how you can choose an unsolved mystery and your thoughts on the outcome. Courtney, I saw your question. No, it does not have to be a real case, but you are going to, if you're choosing a case that's not fiction, that's not real, make sure it's as accurate as possible. Unless you choose one that's not real and then you assess how accurate it is. That's totally fine. But yeah, so your options are to choose a forensics process or to the forensics process of unsolved mysteries and your thoughts on the outcome, or choosing a forensics show like CSI. You can do NCIS. Lucifer does a lot of forensics. NCIS is like fine. It would work. SVU is a little bit more about the crime and less about the forensics. Like they bring in some forensics, but not a lot. And, but you can choose a show that you've watched, right? That you enjoy if you want to assess how accurate it is. Then there are 2 other topics that they'll list in Fuel Ed, and that is the history of the jury system. So just like how we like go the criminal system here and how we go to court and what that looks like. And then, or the other option is to research what it looks like in other countries, that jury system looks like in other countries. So those are your 4 options. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be spending time on our paper. Remember that I said that every lesson is specifically designed to help you through part of it. So there's one lesson more or less every single day. So if you just work a little bit on this paper over the next 2 weeks, then you're going to be in a really good position to be done with this and turn it in by the 22nd. Now, I am going to still be grading anything that is due that you need to turn it in. So for example, 6.3, lesson 6.3, there is a sheet of paper where you are going to be turning in that tells me the specific topic that you're choosing to do. So if you're going to be choosing to do, if you choose to, go through an unsolved mystery, then you're going to tell me specifically what case that is, what sources you plan on using, all of those details so that I know where you are. And that's going to be a homework assignment that is worth points. So making sure that you're going through every single one and not skipping over it is going to be really important because they're also going to teach you how to do everything. So it's a good way for you to learn how to do a research paper in a productive way. And this is something that will help you throughout your high school and post-high school life. So there are several links that are posted here on this document, and they are also posted on the announcements. So for example, we've got this recommended timeline. So this recommended timeline, I have it done in 2 ways. Now, I have it with the dates that are specific to the pacing guide, okay? And then I also have it in general terms, depending on when you are starting this paper. And these days can be, now these are specifically listed as weekdays, but if you are not in a place to start it tomorrow, then you can always use this as a weekend, over the weekend kind of thing. So overall, if you do 1 lesson pretty much a day, that's going to give you about a week to complete it. So it's up to you if you want to do it via like through the weekdays or over the weekends, just depending on where you are. So this is a resource that you can use. I'm not going to go through every single one. Just know that in parentheses are the dates that are technically scheduled on the pacing guide. And you'll notice that one of them tells you to start on April 15th, but it'll be due April 16th. So that means it may take a little bit more time for you to go through it. So that's one of the resources that's there for you. I also have the grading rubric. So this is the rubric that I'm going to be using to grade you on your essay. Now this essay and this research paper is worth 73 points. And it lists exactly what you need to include in order for you to obtain all of the points. So you can look at this on your own time. I always suggest to focus your attention to the highest column, trying to get all of these bullet points and look at everything that's needed in order to get that highest column. If you shoot for the moon, you'll land among the stars, right? If you shoot for the highest, then you'll get around these points, right? Depending on what you include and what you don't. But I always recommend that you look at the rubric in order to ensure that you include everything that you need in order to demonstrate your learning the best. Okay, so those are two leg of business. Now, these are the possible cases. Now, these are starter resources. You are not limited to these cases. They're just here to help you as a way to start. If you can't think of any of them, if you don't know where to start or which one to do, this is one place that you can use, one source that you can use to just get you thinking about it. So we've got different cases. We've got a blurb about each one. This was put together by some of your peers, so you must thank them for that extra work. They were the ones that kind of found these sources that were interesting. And then there's a couple of starter resources. Now, starter resources meaning this should not be your only resource. This is one idea to give you a small little blurb about each one that could be chosen, and then some background information, okay? But that should not be the only thing you do. Then you should start researching and looking into it a little bit more, and looking up different sources by conducting a Google search, an online search, but being really mindful of the sources and being really intentional with the search words that you use. And that's something that they'll go over in the lesson. And then there's also this YouTube channel. Her name is Kendall Ray. I know there's others that are out there, so this is by all means not the only YouTube channel that you can look at, but she goes over a lot of different cases. Again, these are all starter cases. These are all here just to give you an idea of what's out there. You're not limited to them. That doesn't mean that you can only choose through these. It just means that these should inspire you. And in addition, you should be doing extra research, right? So I really can't emphasize that enough. If I haven't repeated myself enough, hopefully one more time will do. AKA, do not just limit yourself to these options. These are starter ideas, starter resources, making sure that you're doing plenty of your own research. Okay, when you submit your final research paper, they should have the following. It does not need to be, I have this in here just for more like, to be on par with what FuelEd Ed says. You don't have to label it this way. It does help, but it's not necessary. Your paper is going to be about 3 to 5 pages. You're going to use 12 point Times New Roman, and you can also double space, okay? So it's not like full on 3 to 5 pages, but it is going to be double spaced. It is acceptable to write more than this, but not developing your ideas to meet the length requirement may cause you to lose points. So really making sure that you're doing enough research and connecting that research to your learning as much as possible, right? Specific in detail. It's my 2 favorite words. You have the timeline so that you can pace your work. Again, I have it here bolded. Work through each lesson in the unit to be sure you have included all the required elements in your paper, like citations, works cited page, and so on. Then you've got to check online for the due date for your final draft. That is Thursday, April 22nd, which is next Thursday. You're going to turn in the final draft by the due date in order to receive full credit. Of course, if circumstances come up, talk to me about it. And then your final draft will be evaluated against the grading rubric, which is posted above. Oh, excuse me, it's 78 points, not 73. Now, When you are going through this, I'm going to talk about what each one is going to involve. But to begin, I just want to walk you through some of the topics that we've learned this quarter. Now, not all of this should appear in your research, right? It all depends. It has to be appropriate to the case. If you're doing a murder, you may not necessarily look into financial crimes, right? Maybe you would. Maybe financial crimes was part of it. But maybe it doesn't have anything to do with arson. So these are all of the topics that we've learned about this quarter. Doesn't mean that they all need to be included in your research paper, but whatever was involved in the evidence and whatever was involved with the forensics process, you're going to appropriately place that into your research paper. Okay. Are any questions on that so far? Any questions on the limits and what I'm expecting for your papers, your sources, before I start talking and breaking down what you're going to want to do what you're going to focus your research on, what questions you're going to try to answer? Are there any questions?
So if we're doing like analyzing a TV show, how do you want us to go about like citing sources? Because if we're just using like analyzing, like comparing the TV show to the content in the Fuel Ed platform, then how do we like cite those sources?
So you may not. Maybe you won't be doing direct quotations, but you can do summarizations. And so if you say like in the show, blah, 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 and then you can put in parentheses the publication of the series, right? So you have to, whatever that looks like. I know there's citation makers out there that, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not a wizard about citations. I could tell you like APA, but I'm not an English teacher, so I can't tell you. But if you go online, there are citation makers where they'll generate, if you just plug in the information and then they'll give you like how to cite it. And the option, the lesson might also tell you. But you may not have direct quotations. You may not have citations if you're analyzing it, right? And that's totally fine. Now, what you might have citations are from the Fuel Ed, right? If you're taking some information and you're citing directly from the source, like the lessons that you've taken, then you might cite Fuel Ed and not necessarily the show. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So if we like, because I want to use a show, I want to analyze a show. So we might not necessarily have like a works cited page. We just cite it in the text.
You'll still have a works cited page. Whenever you cite, you have to do both. So you have to do an in-text citation, and then you also have a works cited page. So anytime there's any time that you're using material, you always have a works cited page. You just need to also give credit into the paper as well.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Courtney?
And clarifying is, like, Caroline, if you were to do like a show like Lucifer, would you cite like suspects and people's names, or more like no? Okay.
You wouldn't cite the people in the show because they're the characters, right? So what you would do is cite like the director or the producer or something like that. But remember that if you're summarizing a show, you might not need to cite the show. You probably need to cite the information that you are using to analyze the show. Does that make sense? So you'll probably do more of a citation with Fuel Ed or any research article that you look up about like forensics entomology or anything extra that you look up. You'll probably want to cite that more than you would cite the show.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Good questions, though. These are really good questions. Okay. So now I'm going to get through, so we're going to do 2 of them, right? So I'm going to walk through the questions that you'll want to answer for 2 of the topics. If you want to do the research on the jury system, those are going to be in the lesson. So this is in addition. Quite frankly, I thought this would be a little bit more interesting for you guys, which is why I created these 2 additional topics with the help of some of your peers. And then I developed this as an addition to what Fuel Ed already has. So you guys can choose. But if you choose to focus on unsolved crimes, these are the kind of questions you're going to want to be asking yourself. At a minimum, these should be addressed, but not at you're not limited to these questions. So you can go above and beyond. So what you're going to want to do if you choose to set an unsolved crime, you're going to want to set the scene. So what has already been reported? What do the detectives suspect happened? So what's going on? What information did they already find? What forensics methods did they use? So think about everything that you learned this quarter, right? So that's all of these things, and which ones do apply to this case and how do they apply specifically, right? So connecting, we're all about connecting. So give me the whys as well. What was the evidence of the case? So give me some information, what evidence was already found, and then try to look up the raw evidence if you can, meaning, articles are going to say there was a fingerprint found at this crime scene. Maybe you can try and see if that evidence is published and out there. Maybe if there's a fingerprint and they show you fingerprints, you can try to identify the whorls, loops, and arcs. If there was ballistic evidence involved, is there a way for you to see what bullets were used? Are there any fingerprints on their bullets that you can try to use what you learned to identify the barrel and the gun yourself instead of just relying on what was already determined? What forensics tests were done? What were the outcomes of those tests? Why were those tests ordered or completed? What would you have done differently, right? So there's two parts of this. That's the first part is, okay, what did they do? Let's connect it to what we've learned. And then the second part is, okay, you've learned it. Now, how would you have handled the case? What would you have ordered? What forensics tests would you like to have done? What could have been done differently? So if we learned about in the very beginning of the quarter, we learned about that process of the forensic steps, right? And we learned about how one of the crimes had to be thrown out the window because there were so many issues with people being allowed into the crime scene investigation that it was tampered with. And therefore, a lot of the evidence couldn't be considered because there was so many issues with it. So thinking about how would you have completed it? How would you have done it differently? Where did they go wrong in the case? Why has it been unsolved? And then what do you think happened? Who do you think the suspect is, or whatever applies to your case? So what do you think the outcome is? So those are the very basic questions you're going to want to answer if you choose to do the topic on unsolved crimes. Okay, any questions on that before I get into explaining the possible questions for the analyzing a TV show? Okay. All right. So if you're analyzing a TV show, a crime show, or something to that effect, these are the kinds of questions that you're going to be answering. Again, you're going to be spending the first time about telling me about the show, giving me the setting of the scene, right? What is the show? What is the show about? Who are the characters and what are their roles or jobs? So you're going to give me a little bit of a summary over it. So like if you're doing Lucifer, which I keep coming back to because I recently watched it and I really like it, even though it's kind of silly, I really like it. Lucifer is about the devil, right? Coming to earth, and he helps and gets involved with the LAPD and starts helping solving crimes. And there is a forensic scientist in there, and she is really trying to help. And there's only one forensic scientist. So it's like this team of like 3 or 4 people. Is that a realistic thing, right? So that's what we're going to start to get into. So you're going to tell me what the show is, the premise of the show, and then you're going to explain the characters. Then you're going to specifically talk about the episode. So remember that specific crime that you're going to be analyzing. So what's the episode about? What is the crime that they're investigating? Then you're going to start to analyze the people. How many different forensic scientists are there? Is it realistic? What forensic scientists should be there, and what area of expertise should they be in? So depending on the crime, should there really be a forensic anthropologist? Maybe you found bones, right? Maybe there's bones that were found that were dug up, and then that means there needs to be a forensic anthropologist. Maybe the episode tells you about how the body has been dead for a while, and they needed a forensic entomologist to figure out how long the body has been dead for, right? All of that stuff. So then what evidence is being analyzed? Were the methods realistic? If so, what was accurate? Connect our topics, again, from that list above and explain it in detail. If they were not realistic, what should have been done and why? So giving me the reasons, was it realistic? Was it not? Always coming back to that why, right? The reasoning, giving me the details. Now, You're also going to compare the process of addressing a crime scene to the show and how it should be done, right? So that was in the very beginning of the quarter. We learned about the steps and how they close off the crime scene, who gets called. Is that what actually happened in the show? Did they, were they wrong? And what should have been the process that they would have gone in? So that's kind of your analyzing part. Couple of other questions that you're going to want to answer are things like, well, what do real forensic scientists feel about this? Are they going to be happy with the accuracy? Do you think that it's been well done? Or do you think that they'll be annoyed and frustrated, right? Because it's not always, maybe it's not depicted as well. Who would you have called for a consultant, or who could have advised them to be more authentic? Who do you think they should have called in order to tell them, no, that's not actually how it is. It should be more like this. And if you were writing the episode, how would you have written the episode to be more accurate? Or how would you have directed it different to be more realistic and accurate? So those are 3 different parts for that second one. The first one is you're giving me the setting of the scene, analyzing what did they do. The second one is comparing it to real life. And then the third one is, what would you have done differently? How could you have changed the writing of the show to be more realistic? Okay. And those are the big questions. Those are the big components, the big topics that you're going to be doing for your research paper. Are there any questions on that? Okay, I agree, Courtney. So we have about 20 minutes left. Now you can choose, that's pretty much everything I have for you today. Just really wanted to spend time today going over the sources, the final research paper, and then where you can find everything. So remember, one last time for the people in the back, oh my gosh, nobody died. She is.
Oh my goodness. I was
Oh my God, so sorry.
If she died, I think I would die with her, man. Seriously.
Nope. That was all my mistake. That was my mistake. Misspoken. But let me go ahead and show you one more time where you can find that research paper, because I'm so worried people are going to miss it. Once you get into 6.3 and planning your research paper, the link is right here where it's unsolved crimes. And that's going to bring you to the paper that I just showed you. And then also, then you can go into planning your research paper. Now, if anyone were to miss this, that means that they're going to only be doing the whole jury thing, which would be a shame, because I think this is a really cool opportunity for you guys to actually apply what you've learned to a real life situation, and something that's kind of interesting. Not that the other things aren't interesting, but this is just, like, really interesting. Who doesn't want to like look into these shows and do all these things, right? So planning your research paper, that's where you can find it. Or if you just go to the most recent announcement of this week, you'll also find the link right here. And then those 3 links that are in this paper are also right here: the timeline, grading rubric, and resource suggestions. And then, the rest of the 2 weeks, I do not have formal lessons planned. So that's going to be the little bit different. What I'm going to be doing for the next 2 weeks, instead of having formal lessons planned, I'm going to be here as like somebody to check in with about your research paper. If you want me to look over something, if you want my guidance, I will say that I can revise. I can look at your paper one time before it is final. Okay, so I do that only because it's just a little bit easier on me in terms of timing wise. And I'll look, if you want me to read through your paper and give you my feedback, I'll read through your paper one time before you turn it in for your final. Okay, so that may come in handy next week, but that's what the next 2 weeks are going to look like. Are there any questions on anything so far?
Just to like make sure, I know you've mentioned before that you don't really want to read like 5 pages. So should we keep it to more like 3, 2 or 3?
That's fine. I don't mind if it's 3 to 5 pages. I would really recommend no more than 5 pages.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah. It's okay. I understand because the thing is that I included a lot of questions in there. And they're all there to like help guide you, but I also recognize it's a lot. So I would say if it's anything less than 3 pages, that really automatically tells me that there was either not enough research done or not enough connections to what we've learned this quarter. And if it's more than 5 pages, it usually means that there was too much information that may not necessarily be relevant, or there's too many busy words, meaning there's a lot of fluff and not as much content. So there's this like happy medium piece. So that's just my recommendation to keeping it between 3 and 5.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, we have about 18 minutes left of this allotted time. So what I would like to do from here on out is either you can stay and get started on the topics. You can start looking at lesson 6.3, skip over 6.2 if you haven't done it yet for today, and start looking at 6.3 and start thinking about, it seems like Caroline and Courtney, it seems like you guys are inclined to doing the show and analyzing the show, which is awesome. So then start to think about, okay, what show are you going to do? Which episode are you going to do? And there is a document that you're going to turn in as an assignment in 6.3 that's going to start telling you and start telling me what it is. So if you guys want to start looking and doing lesson 6.3 while I'm here, I can help narrow down some ideas. Maybe if you have a couple of episodes and you're not sure which one you want to do, I can help you with that, because remember, you do want to choose an episode that's going to be a little bit more heavy on the forensics and that process, rather than like maybe the drama of what's happening between the detectives, right? So there is like a little bit of an art to choosing the episode. And then if you don't want to do that right now, then, you're free to go. Maybe you want to work on this on your own, or maybe you want to work on another class. I totally understand. The choice is yours. So it's up to you what you guys want to do.